Hi, my name is Gene Monterastelli, and the video you are about to watch is a recording from the 24 Hours of Tapping, which is an event that is held annually to support the Peaceful Heart Network. If you appreciate or learn anything from this video, the easiest way for you to say thank you is to support the work of the Peaceful Heart Network, who has worked with over 300,000 migrants, immigrants, prisoners, folks in disaster areas by bringing tapping to them. As you watch the video, across the bottom, you will see a link where you can support their amazing work. And I hope you enjoy this conversation.
Gunilla, Hamne, and Ulf Sandstro. Gunilla and Ulf are the co-creators of FAST, First Aid, Stress, and Trauma, which includes Trauma Tapping Technique, TTT, which you have heard it referred to many times. A simplified, language and content-free tapping modality that is designed for non-specialized scaling via the organization they have founded, the Peaceful Heart Network. FAST and TTT has reached over 300,000 people in trouble spots all over the world. For more than 15 years, Gunilla and Ulf have been involved in international humanitarian work in over 45 countries. Please welcome to our virtual stage, Gunilla and Ulf, my friends. Hello, it is so good to see the two of you.
Yeah, so nice to be here. Wow, that was such an amazing introduction. It's like, oops.
Well, and that's what I want to talk about, is because I know that when you started this work, what we just experienced right there might have been a hope, might have been a dream, but was not the first step. So I would just love, initially, for those who don't know, who are joining us for the first time, just kind of give us the origin story. How did this work come about? What were the grassroots of it as you stepped into it? And we'll just talk about some lessons that have been learned along the way.
Yeah, I think I leave to Ulf, because sometimes we share who tells what part of the story. So since the beginning is kind of my story, I leave it to Ulf to tell it, because it makes it much more interesting.
Excellent.
We don't hear you.
Ulf, you're having a microphone issue. For some reason, we can't hear you, Ulf.
Yeah.
Your mic
Gene,
is there we go.
Yeah, it's just technology. That's all. So, Gene, I just want to say your name is lacking a letter.
Is it?
Yep.
Uh-oh.
There's an I missing before the last E.
Is it?
No, there's not.
Yes, there is, because you're a genie.
Oh.
No, I'm serious. I mean, this is it. I met Gunilla because I was checking out emails and I was checking out blogs, and I was working with trauma, hypnosis, NLP. I was looking, is there anything that works that is nonverbal? I found a blog. I found a person traveling around in Africa in the footsteps of the genocide in Rwanda who was actually doing something without words. And I was blown away. I was like skeptic, of course. I was going, my arms crossed, like a white male going, if this works, I'd like to know more. And Gunilla answered that email and kind of explained that she had been working as a journalist. She had been going around for something called the World's Children's Prize, an organization that interviewed children to find out who they voted for as someone that actually helped them to reach the goals of what are the rights of child. And so she would interview children who had been in difficult situations. And as she did the interview, she would see them actually disintegrate, fall apart in the seams, because to get a good story, you need the actual sense of it. And the sense of it is what wakes up the trauma. So she went back. And she said, I can't do this. I need something more. She already had Chatsu. She was a body therapist. She had somatic therapies. And she found TFT, which is thought field therapy, which is one of the first forms of tapping in the Western world. And she learned it, and she found Dr. Carl Johnson in Virginia. And she wrote him an email saying, I'd like to work with victims of traumatic experiences. And he had been working in Kosovo. He had the first study that was published, and he answered, sure, give me half a year, I'll see you somewhere. And she met him in Rwanda. And that's how it all started. And that's how I found her, through her blog. And I sent her an email saying, if that really works, I'd like to learn it. And she said, Sure, see you in a half a year in Sweden. So, long story short, Gunilla is the explorer that connected the dots and the people and the knowledge that is thousands of years old into how to work with specifically trauma, because that was what Dr. Carl Johnson told us. Find the most vulnerable and help them in ways that are trauma competent, not just informed.
And before we continue, like the first time I heard that piece of vocabulary, trauma competent, was from you when we had a chance to gather in February. And the moment you said it, it just, all the synapses lit up inside of my head, because I think it's such a useful, thoughtful thing. I would love for you to explain in your mind, what is the difference between being trauma informed and trauma competent?
Well, you can take that, Gunilla.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought you were directing yourself to Ulf, since that was
No,
where
I'm
the word
directing it
came
towards
from.
whoever wants to talk to me.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, it is different. I mean, you can know a lot about trauma, and that is a bit how the stories that we hear from many people that we meet in challenged areas. It is like Placide Nkubito, our dear colleague in Rwanda and Eastern Africa, who is our communication officer, who had been to training, specifically actually one that he was telling about with the Red Cross in Rwanda. And they were talking about trauma, like many others, listing all the symptoms of trauma. And he felt like, oh, you're talking about me because I have 26 out of those 28 ones. But then finish. Nothing, what do you do to help? So he became trauma informed. He knew what was trauma and that he was most probably traumatized, but not what to do about it. So then when coming to this techniques that we are here for, be it tapping or other first aid techniques for stress and trauma, when you have them included, I mean, that you really are informed, but then also you need to be competent. You need to know, how does this happen? I mean, like me as a journalist, I mean, what happens when I talk to somebody asking all those questions? I mean, it is to be understanding, but then also, again, next step, what can I do about it? So it is to have an environment where you actually act from the knowledge of how can you trigger somebody's past emotions, or not past emotions, but trigger these things that really brings out the trauma, and then know what to do about it. So it's like a 3-step model or whatever, or it's not even a model, but it is like having these things with you when you are working. So it's not only to tell people about, because we can know so much about trauma. I mean, it has become very popular. I mean, you can hear, I mean, in the radio in Sweden, you can hear something about trauma almost every day. And it is a lot about how to cope with trauma, not how to heal from trauma, not how to deal with people who are traumatized. It is because it often stops by being trauma informed. Then, of course, there are many people working and doing very good things, so it's not that. But still, the importance of being trauma competent compared to trauma informed.
And I really like that, because I mean, I can be aware of an injury in my body, but it doesn't mean I know how to respond to it in a proper, thoughtful, helpful way. And for me, the other, like, one of the lessons that I've learned deepest from your work and watching it happen is this idea of what content-free intervention looks like. And having that rooted in this idea of trauma competency, where we're ensuring that we're making sure we're taking care of them. So I would love for you guys to just talk a little bit about the power of using these tools without necessarily having to tune into the details and say the words, because most of us, when we were introduced into tapping, to the point that I've started calling it the tapper's dilemma, that most of us, when we were taught how to tap, we were taught to be as specific as possible. And the more specific you are, the more powerful this particular tool is. And I think it gets people really, really hung up, because if I don't know how to start, then I'm not being specific, and therefore it's not useful. And so through the lens of use, but also through the lens of this idea of trauma competency, like, how can we think about tapping without words and any tool without necessarily having to say the things out loud?
I think that one of the things we'd like to answer to that is that we have an answer to absolutely every single question anybody has. How can you be trauma competent? What's the difference between trauma competent and trauma informed? How do you know if you're actually doing the right thing? Is it too early? Is it too late? Can I do it just recent intervention after something just happened? Is it okay? And we just say, if this isn't the answer, we'll buy you lunch. Just text us. Our number is on the webpage. And the answer is, it depends, because it truly does. If you want to be scientific about anything, you know that nothing is proven until it is, and everything is surely one way until it isn't. Having said that, as a frame, what we mean is we are deliberately taking away anything from a intervention that could be therapeutic and looking to minimize it into something that is the minimum viable product, the first aid step of anything. And it's not only what you do, it's more about what you don't do. You don't do therapy. You don't ask people to talk about the details. They've already lived it once. You don't tell them your SUD was 9, now it's 8. That's good or bad. You ask them, is that good or bad? You don't specifically try to find out if you help them or not. You try to find out if something is different. Because the difference between trauma intervention and trauma competent intervention and any other therapeutic intervention is that the traumee, the person you're looking to help, owns the answer. And all you want is for them to become 1 milli% more safe than they were just a moment ago. Just one more step on the island of safety from the sea of sharks. And if that's all you can do, you're in the right direction. And then you give them the tools to continue to get up on that piece of land where they're safe when they are back in a refugee camp, in their muddy tent, in a prison, in their cell, in life, in an abusive relationship, maybe back with a hubby they're not yet sure how to handle. But it's all about safely getting one small step at a time rather than trying to resolve something. Does that make sense?
It does. And one of the things that like I'm very happy has gone away in the tapping community is we spend a lot less time talking about 1 minute and 1 session miracles. You know, I know that when we learn something new and we're trying to convince the people around us of this, well, it's so magical. Let me tell you the biggest, grandest story ever. And I think that's created, and I think this is true for any sort of time. Anytime I am looking for help and transformation, I want total, instantaneous, eternal transformation. That's all. Like I want to do something that happens in this instantaneous way. And for me, I guess my journey has been a journey to, I'm just trying to live in the ER, not the emergency room, but the ERs, gentler, easier, safer. You know, am I in a circumstance where I'm feeling a little safer, like you were talking about, Ulf, and just recognizing these incremental steps are super, super valuable. I think the other thing that you're hitting on inside of that answer is something I've been wrestling with a lot, is this idea that I no longer think of tapping as an approach. I think of tapping as a tool, because every single time we sit down to tap, like there's a difference between me doing emotional first aid, which is just helping someone to get back into their body, which is different than working with a skilled mental health professional to work with complex trauma, or tapping for a physical issue, or tapping to clear a limiting belief, or tapping so that I'm a little more flexible. And each time we sit down, we do it in a slightly different way. And by recognizing in this initial way that we are being helpful, that little dose of emotional first aid to recognizing that these baby steps are not insignificant. Like they're super, super, super valuable as we're kind of navigating our way through this stuff, so that my resource state is different for the next thing that I encounter. Because if I'm in a slightly better resource state when something bad happens or something out of control happens, I am more likely to be able to make a thoughtful choice, because I'm a little less stressed. I'm a little less overwhelmed. I'm a little more in my body as I'm doing that. And it's just such a beautiful reminder to the value of better, not done. And a friend of mine years ago wrote a song called Unfinished, which was him wrestling with the fact that that is how he was going to feel for his entire life as a
Life.
human. You know, that
That's
we're
hopeless.
always, yeah. And I can remember sharing that song with a friend, and they were really saddened by that, thinking, oh no, I'm not. And then other people are like, oh yes, that's the journey that we're on as we're engaging with all of this stuff. And so I really like the idea of framing this as, how do we make it a little better for the next thing that is coming in our day?
I mean, we often take metaphor for this, and that is, I mean, I remember staying with friends when I was in primary school in the basement, sleeping
Yep.
overnight, and it was completely dark, and your eyes cannot find any light, but just this little glimpse from the door that was open a little bit gave the light enough for you to finally you find the room. And for me, that is this, that sometimes actually, yeah, like you say, it's a baby step, but it is a baby step.
Yeah.
It's not just a baby step. It is a baby
Yeah.
step, and it becomes perhaps a leap the next time or so. But it is this bringing in this little light of safety, because that's what it all comes down to. And that reminds me of that with trauma competence brings actually a step before also, which is what you're talking a bit about also, this of building resilience, because that's also, it is because the more resilient you are, the less prone to be traumatized, because the more you use these techniques to have a baseline that is lower, the less many times you will be going high again, because your body is coming. That's why they do all this research on Buddhist monks meditating, because they already are very low in stress. Yeah, sorry.
And I can remember when we were in the north of Rwanda. I got a chance to accompany you to a training for a bunch of medical aid workers who were taking care of those fleeing the warlords in Congo. And one of my favorite things about the time that I got a chance to spend in Africa is the testimonials. And that's the way they framed it. Them telling their story of the healing and transformation. And one of the women telling the story that it rained and I was able to sleep. And for someone who was in the genocide that happened during the rainy season, it would make sense that those two things would be connected. And that doesn't, I can now sleep. And for anybody who has ever spent a lifetime struggling with that particular thing, it's a small thing, except it's not. It's anything but a small thing. That just making some of these simpler acts that make us more resilient, make it easier the next time we're encountering something, be it in our world or what is just firing off in our subconscious mind as we're traveling our way through our day.
Exactly. Yeah, so true. So true.
And so as you think about this, you've now been doing this for a very long time in lots and lots of different places. If you could go back to the very, very early version of you doing this particular work, if you could, not that the younger version of you would listen, because I know all of the wisdom that I would want to give to the younger version of me, and the younger version of me is not going to listen. But let's pretend for a moment that the younger version is going to listen. In the beginning of all of this, if you could bring a message back to them, what would you want to share with the younger versions of you doing this work?
I think it's fairly simple. Our main idea and mission was to help the most vulnerable to find resilience and a way to act rather than react in their lives, in their context, which we have no idea about, which we cannot fathom the challenges of, in ways that would be better than they're doing currently. So how do we do that? Well, we provide them with something that gives them hope, because when you lose hope, you can die shortly. We know this from Viktor Frankl. We know this from the Lost Boys of Sudan. We know this from millions of testimonials. When people lose hope, they can sit down and literally just life will drain from them. So how do you maintain hope? Hope is about two things. I might be able to handle this, and there might be someone who is caring enough to help me handle this. So it's about within and without. And when we were working in, among other places, in Greece, where refugees are coming from loads of conflicts all over the world to travel into Europe, which is a place where there is currently, or the last 100 years or so, slightly more safety than other places, or seems to be. So they get into rafts that are built for, 15 people, and maybe they're 80 people. And they're probably, men on the outer circle and women on the next circle and infants on the inner. And they're hypothermic and they're, drifting with a broken engine in the black waters, looking to evade the Coast Guard. If they make it to the other shore and they jump ashore, they firstly want to kiss the ground, just being thankful and saying, I'm so happy I didn't drown. And the next thing we realized was that TAS, because you have to have a 3-letter abbreviation or you're nothing in this world, right? So TAS means tea and a smile. Offer them something warm they can drink and sweet, and smile as if they're friends. And you've basically given them hope within and without. And then you can do the rest. You can learn the tapping, the havening, the breathing, the yoga, the meditation, the dancing, the music, the song, the hand clapping, the balloon passing, the discussion, the dialogue, the drawings. But we're mammals. We're basically, I tell, when I've been to Los Angeles working with Homeby Industries, I say the reason you call each other, hey, dog, is because we are dogs. We're mammals. And mammals co-regulate. And if we do that, we're good.
Yeah, and of course this goes anywhere, no matter where. It offers something. Perhaps in Sweden a coffee, perhaps a glass of water when it's very hot. So,
Or mint tea in Tunisia.
Yeah, mint tea, or also in Turkey it would be tea, but black tea in the summer because it's not good to drink cold when it's hot. But anyway, I didn't understand your question. Really.
Yeah. So this is my question. So you've been doing this work for a very long time, and I'm assuming you have learned and you have grown along the way.
Yeah.
And as you've learned and grown along the way, like what is a lesson that, like, if you would have known it earlier in the work that you were doing, that would make it easier, like would have made something in this journey easier for you to figure out how to show up as the amazing helpers that you are in the world? Because, intention is great. Yeah. And I would like to believe, as a practitioner working for clients with almost 2 decades, that the clients I worked with in the beginning, I was helpful to. And today I work in a very, very different way that I think is healthier, that I think is more transformative, that I think is, and they're like, the podcast that I recorded yesterday was, if I were to go back to my younger version of me, it'd be go slower. Like, don't be in such a rush. Don't go to the reframe. Don't go to the outcome. Just be present and here. So that's what I mean by that question. Like, what is, if you could go back to the younger version of you and give her a piece of wisdom that would have made this journey easier, better, got you there faster? That's the question.
Okay.
That's why my answer was tea and a smile.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It is. In a way, I could say that because I'm just reading old notebooks because I'm writing something about this story of this development of this work, and when I see it at the first times I went to Rwanda with Dr. Carl Johnson, who was the one to say these things that Ulf said. I mean, go to the most forgotten places for the vulnerable people. Don't make people suffer more because they suffered already. It's all these things comes back to Dr. Johnson, who worked with war veterans for many years in the Veterans Administrative Hospitals, or what you call it in the US. So when I read what I wrote, in a way, I mean, this may sound strange, is that I find, shit, how could I have this image of doing this work? How could I, think that I could help people in other places? So, I mean, and sometimes, and one time I called it like, what was it? And you changed it, Ulf. I said it was a naive way. But then Ulf said that, no, it was bold. I mean, it was like brave, or, it was so. And when I read it, I can really see that, my goodness, even though I knew the people I was coming to in Rwanda, but still with this professor, when I, who was behaving, I mean, we were not, what do you say, compatible, it's really,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
still, I learned so much from him. And this simplification that we have done together with Ulf. So it is like, I see this process, and I cannot really say that I am wiser today. I'm, because
That's
when I,
awesome. And
yeah,
I appreciate that
yeah,
answer. Yeah.
yeah. Of course, we have developed a lot of materials and things, but I did something at that time also. They learned. I all directly started thinking, TFT, you cannot, because that comes also to this with working content free, and this it is that directly I started thinking, and we have developed that it is to work with groups, that it's not individual mainly. And
Yeah.
Dr. Johnson, he wanted to make the, like you say, the direct to one person.
Yep.
I thought these techniques are too good, and that's why we created Peaceful Heart Network. They're too good to be kept to one to one to one. You need to reach many people because the world needs this. And today, of course, unfortunately, more than ever, when it comes to how these traumatized nations keep fighting, because the trauma goes not on the individual level, family level, community level, to nation level. I mean, and when you start looking at the world in this way, that you see that, okay, it's not different. It's unhealed wounds of trauma that keeps playing out over and over and over again, also on the individual level. That is seen as political level. Anyway, so in a way I can say that I don't know what it was, but I mean, all these things that we have done has helped, of course, and Ulf is excellent in this digital, tools. So, and that in today during pandemic and after. Sorry, I'm talking too much.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right. Like I think you're both right. I think naive and bold go hand in hand. Like sometimes it is easier to be bold when we don't know what the stakes are yet.
Yeah,
when we are just driven by that internal spark, and it takes us places that we wouldn't imagine.
Yeah.
I would love for you to expand a little bit in detail around this idea of like the value and the importance that you put on doing content-free intervention when you're working in groups. Like, like I think for folks who've been doing this work for a very, very long time, that can almost be taken for granted. So I would like you to just kind of explain why you see that as something that is not only valuable, but is safe as we're working with difficult things.
Yeah, you go, Ulf. Now I've been talking so much. So.
But I mean, I could be listening.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely say.
But the thing is this, what Gunilla did, which is different, which is bold and not naive, is to go to look to see if the most vulnerable and the most traumatized might be helped, and not one by one, because this is not, I mean, I'm not saying that Europe and Africa are wildly different, because we're all people, we're all mammals, we're all dogs. We co-regulate. But there is more of a village still going on in Africa and less going on in Western Europe and the US, Western culture. And so healing in groups has been proven in all therapies, even in studies of just Western therapies, to be more powerful because we co-regulate, because we are mammals. Because if a group of people find calm, if there are 2 or 3 individuals who are not calm, the calm will be induced into them, and they will be calmer because they are in a group of calm people. And so this means that working with large groups is easily embraced in the African cultural context, because that's how it's naturally done. But it works just as well in any other context, which we've proven with Carrie, who will be speaking later from Chesterfield County Jail, doing tapping with 100, 160 inmates at the same time in Chesterfield County Jail or other places. So I would say it's just an easier cultural context. And what happens is, if you are nonverbal, if you don't need to connect specifically together to one individual's specific situation, but you can take the general unease or uncomfort with something and you throw it into the air around a campfire, and you all collectively embrace it and help to reduce it, you're doing something collectively, which is a collective healing effort, which has so many more implications and layers and dimensions than one-on-one therapy. And I would say, that's what I learned from traveling with Gunilla. That's what I learned from Germando, our colleague, or Placide, who, hopefully people will meet. It's that if you take away the village, the child falls between the chairs. If the village is there, the child can be raised.
So I think, like, for folks who have not experienced it before, would it be useful if y'all would just lead us through what it looks like if you were tapping with a group of people, and with the hundreds of folks that we currently have gathered at the moment, we can just do a little of that work together.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure.
Of course we can.
Yeah,
We are
It's all you.
one,
Go for
like
it.
Bob Marley says. It's I and I. It's only us. Let's do it.
yeah. So you're so much welcome, and to our gathering here, where we're gonna do some tapping. And since you all know Gene, and he has introduced us, because this is how we work. It is always by introduction, being introduced by somebody. And now we have been invited by Gene. And since you know Gene, he works also with tapping, and he knows you. And so he wanted us to come and to lead you to this technique that we call trauma tapping technique. And it's a simple, easy way to lower the stress a bit in your body. You don't need to mention anything. You can, if you like, think about something. Very likely that when you think about it, it bothers you somewhat. Perhaps it sits somewhere in your body, manifests somewhere. And you can just check where it manifests and how you feel when you think about that. Or you just do it as an exercise, because every time you do that tapping, something will happen in your body, because we always have something that we bring with us, but we don't need to know what it is, because you can keep it to yourself. And if you afterwards would like to share, feel most welcome. So then you can just sit. If you're sitting in a chair, I will also move a bit, and so you have your feet in the floor or the ground or wherever you are. So, your feet, they are your roots towards Mother Earth. And then you keep your spine comfortably erect. So it's not like stretching up like this, but it's not hunching down. And don't lean to like for me, it would be like this. Don't lean to the backrest, but hold your body with your muscles. Because when your spine is straight, all your nerves will be able to do their work and connect to your whole system of the lungs, the heart. And when we hunch, and sometimes sitting with the phone, we recognize that you bend your neck, you go more into what would be a protective posture, fetus posture, which brings not well-being, but when you raise up, it opens up your chest, your heart. You're open for the world a bit. So you just sit like this. And then we have a favorite breathing that we start with before doing tapping. So you put your hands in front of your chest, or prayer position, or whatever you like to call it, or a lotus. And then you breathe in and you stretch up. And then you breathe out when you lower your arms.
And everybody do this with us.
Yeah, so just do this. So you breathe out. So, and then you can just do the tapping. So we do it in this way. So we start at the side of the hand. And for you most of you have done tapping before, you recognize all these points. You might do it a bit different. You might miss some point that you usually use, or you might find some points, I don't use that one. Or if you're new to this, just follow. So it's like here, the fleshy part of the hand. Okay. And then we do like Donna Eden calls crown pull. So you put the thumbs on the temples, and you do like a massage of your prefrontal cortex, giving some kind of energy, some circulation to this part of your brain that actually goes offline when you are stressed and traumatized. So you give it, and then you have our worry wrinkles, or whatever it's called in English here, so that you can stretch them out a bit like that. Okay, good. And then you tap, and I tap with 3 fingers, some tap with 2 fingers, but it is just where the eyebrows meet. And then you follow, it's like stroking your eyebrows, and then you go to the outside of the eye. And as we say, don't forget to breathe while you're doing this. And then you go under the eye on the highest point of your cheekbones. And then you take one hand under the nose on your roots of the teeth. And then you go around the mouth, so between the lip and the chin. And then you go down to the chest. And for us, we tap all over the chest, not only because this work of Peaceful Heart Network started below the Virunga Mountains, where the mountain gorillas dwell, and in Congo, where the lowland gorillas are, and they are very good in tapping the chest and saying, this is my place, you're welcome, I'm feeling fine today. But also because there are certain many points on your chest. If behind your breastbone, you have your thymus gland that is super important for your immune system. You have lymph drainage points here that we call sometimes a sore spot, that we sometimes massage a bit also. You have this muscle that contracts in anxious time. And then, of course, you have the point that is indicated on this chart beside here, the point under the collarbone. So that's what we do. And then we do it like this. So you take your left hand and put it on your right shoulder, and then you tap on side of your chest, just having your arm 90 degrees over your body. Wonderful. And then we go to the fingers, so each finger gets a tapping. Just beside the nail. And the thumb, and then we do one more time on the chest, because we find it so helpful, and so many testify that, oh, I love this. Kids and dogs also love this, to make somebody, sleep. So, okay, good. And after that, again, you release your hands, and then you breathe in, and then breathe out. Again, breathe in, and breathe out. And we often do 2 rounds, but I think it's fine with 1 round, isn't it?
Yeah, that works. And so there's a couple of things that I think is super, super valuable in what you model inside of that. And you model it inside of your work, you model it right there. This idea of invitation and not being the person who just shows up with the solution. One of the reasons why I have such a heart and passion for you guys' work is because, like, and right's the wrong word, but it feels like you do it the right way. You're showing up from this disposition of humility and of offer, not like, I know that when I first learned tapping, in the first 18 months, I talked more people out of tapping than I was able to invite them into tapping, because of my enthusiasm and my overwhelming. Whereas I was sharing it, I could just finally see them slowly starting to back away as the person is talking so much. And so being in a circumstance where you're arriving from invitation makes such a big difference. I mean, I mentioned that at the beginning, top of the hour when we started all of this. Everybody is here because someone else invited them to be a part of this particular thing. And we are so much more receptive inside of that. The other thing is, and again, I'm a person that does all sorts of reframing and other tools and other techniques when I am tapping on my own and other people. And that sense of just relief that comes from that small amount of work that we just did right there, just tapping on the points and not saying anything at all. Like I can just, goosebumps just immediately went over my entire system. I am sitting more erect without having to force myself to sit more erect, because I'm grounded, and it becomes the natural posture inside of that. And so to be in a circumstance to have something so simple for us in any moment to be able to pause and do it in that way, it's such a useful reminder of how powerful this is if we do it in that way.
And how intelligent the body is when you just find out how well we can talk to the body and the mind. I mean, it's so amazing. I'm so amazed. How can this work so well? Yeah, it is like this Morse alphabet or Morse signals, or you call it. It's like really tapping peace into your body. And it works. I mean, after 15 years, I mean, now you start like this. When you've done it so long, it's like the body says, okay, I know, I'm going to relax.
Yeah. I mean, for years, I had a zero gravity chair that I used when I was doing my guided imagery and self hypnosis. And it got to the point that if I was sitting at my desk and I just turned my head and I looked at the chair, my body was conditioned to connect that chair with all of the stress leaving my body. You know, at a certain point, like, you know, years ago I was talking to a friend of mine who's an acupuncturist who was in a circumstance where he was almost freaked out because he was working with a client, and as the needle was descending before it had even touched the skin, relief had come, because there is this idea of remembered wellness inside of the system. And I can't wait. Later in this event, we have an amazing conversation with Dr. David Feinstein where he actually explains why it works inside of the body and what the actual mechanism behind all of this wacky tappy stuff is. But it's just so lovely to be in a circumstance where we're able to give someone, as I was at the beginning of the year getting ready for this event, one of the things I wrote across the top of my notebook on doing all of the logistics for this was, my goal is to put you out of business. I do not want the Peaceful Heart Network to exist, because I want the world to be healed to the point where we don't need to be having these particular conversations, you know, and for us to be thinking in that particular way is just wonderful. So, well, from the bottom of my heart, like you all,
that's what we feel as well, Gene.
You know, you've just,
we want to be superfluous. We want to, you know, I mean, we're going to terminate some point. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, we might just have like 200 years left, so we have to hurry up. And you know, all we want is for you who are listening to this to, as we say on our cards, find calm and pass it on, because we've calculated that if it's enough if 400 people treat, you know, 10 people each 7 days a week, we can do the whole earth in 30 days or something like that. And on another note, you know, what is it that actually makes this different? It's not that the tapping or the sequence or the points, it's what we don't do. And what we call a trauma competent approach is also a clean approach, coming from David Grove's clean language. So we assume nothing. Someone comes and says, I've been, you know, sexually abused 25 times, which actually can happen, which is really, you know, beyond imagination. But assume nothing. It doesn't mean they don't want to be touched. It doesn't mean they don't want to be helped. It doesn't mean anything. You ask. Use the words of the person. If they say, you know, I've had a really funky, shitty day, you don't say, was it bad? You say, funky, shitty day. And you don't ask for details, because in the words of Dr. Carl Johnson, they've suffered once, it's enough. They said, I had a funky, shitty day, and, you know, this thing happened. And then you just say, this thing happened. You don't say, tell me more, or explain it, or put words on it, or, you know, make me understand it. And that means you're going to neutralize it normally, or normalize it neutrally. Because, you know, someone says, I have been in an abusive relationship 10 years. You being sorry for them is not going to help them. You judging them is not going to help them. You telling them 20 years, would you like to try something that might be of help? Might help them. And then we always say, focus on the future, on what you want, not on what you don't want. You know, I just want to not have to worry. Not have to worry is not a future. I just want to, you know, look into tomorrow with a smile on my face. That's a future. And, you know, you point the mind there and you're going to be good.
Awesome. Well, excellent. Well, thank you for giving me some of your Friday evening, you all. I cannot wait to be in your presence again sometime soon to give you big hugs.
I think it's Sweden, Gene. I think it has to be Sweden.
Well, you know, my sister, who is on the other side of the wall providing this support, wants to come and meet the dogs. So
the dogs want to meet her.
Something like that's going to happen.
Don't get between dogs and a sister. It's a bad place.
Absolutely. Awesomeness.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, guys. And I look forward to seeing you guys real soon.
Yeah. And
Thanks for doing this,
greetings to
Gene.
Elaine
We love
behind the
you.
wall.
And whoever's listening, get all your friends to join and all your enemies. They'll all be happy.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation. As you look at the screen right now, you can see a link to the entire playlist of every single conversation for previous 24 hours of tapping. There are over 120 presentations waiting for you. And please consider supporting the amazing work of the Peaceful Heart Network.